Hi, I'm Astrologer Penny Dix, and welcome to my in-depth look for this month's full moon in Gemini. Now, this full moon is on the 4th of December, and it is at, let me have a look, 13 degrees and 3 minutes. And as the moon is in Gemini, it means we have the sun in Sagittarius, its opposite sign. Now, this is about I think it's the third full moon that we've had at 13 degrees. There is this strange anomaly at the moment, which you may have heard Steve Judd, the astrologer, talk about. And I believe Penny Thornton has referred to it as well, amongst other astrologers who may also refer to this. But we've had, and we're in the midst of, several full moons and new moons all at the same point. So does this have any meaning symbolically? We've got this one in December at 13 degrees, and then we have the one in January will be at 13 degrees, and also the one in February will be at 13 degrees. And then they start to drift off to 12, to 11, etc., as the year of 2026 progresses. And the new moons have all been around 28 degrees of their respective sign. Well, I think there is something about this containment of the full moon energy over several months and of the new moon energy over several months, which is as if it's the overture, it's introducing us to the energies we can expect in 2026, because it's a year that will see see some astrological energies that we've not really encountered before. And I haven't done my overview for 2026 yet. I'm doing that very soon. And when I go into that, I will talk about how 2026 can be seen as a year of, in a sense, awakening. It's where the energy is such that, well, you always have a choice. It's great time to take risks. I would actually say there's no time when it's not a good idea to take risks, although one could say if you've perhaps got a Mars-Uranus opposition going on, maybe not. But there is something about the energy for next year which is, it's like we're on the brink, the precipice of some really exciting changes that can take place if we choose on an inner level and on an outer level. Now, we get these changes, opportunities for change all the time, but there is something about the energy of next year where it's as if many years of working towards certain changes can at last actually start to unfold. But before I get carried away and discover that this video becomes an overview of 2026, I'm going to bring us back to the energy of the full moon in Gemini, because that's what we're here to do. So at this point, I will get Jerry to put up the chart. There we go, the chart. So I want to draw your attention to the full moon up there in Gemini at 13 degrees in the 10th house, because as your eyes drop down, you will see the sun at 13 degrees in the 4th house of Sagittarius, part of a stellium of Lilith, Venus, the sun, Juno, which is an asteroid, and Mars, all nicely bunched up in Sagittarius. So they are, it's as if they are bringing in a sense of excitement, urgency, and energy. Now then, I want to take your eyesight. Let's go up to where it says 10 degrees on the ascendant of Virgo. And you will see that up there is the South Node in Virgo at 13 degrees. And then if your eyes go across the chart, you will see at 10 degrees of Pisces as the descendant, you will see the North Node at 13 degrees and 43 minutes. So we have what is known as a mutable grand cross. Mutable because Sagittarius, Gemini, Pisces and Virgo, they are mutable signs, which means they have an ability to stay in the energy of flexibility, of change, of movement, of just being able to go more with the flow of things. So is this a full moon of flow? Well, let's just think about what a grand cross symbolizes, because this one is mutable. Well, a grand cross, which means you've actually got 4 squares from each point to the node and back again. What this means is it's presenting us with some challenges. It's pushing us to grow, to change. Now, my sense is because the moon is in Gemini, which is about communication, thinking, thought, ideas. Also, of course, Gemini can be about social media, technology, bringing in that element of messaging and news and that type of energy. Now, then we look at the South Node, which, of course, is about, in my experience, what we bring in, what we've brought in from the past. That can be the past in this life. Maybe it's also what we bring in from past lives, if we want to embrace that way of thinking. And then if we go across to the North Node in Pisces, showing us the way forward, showing us our destiny. If we let our eyes go above that to Neptune and Saturn in Pisces, Neptune is still retrograde at this point. Saturn has gone direct. Now they are staying buddies as they will move forward, as we know, towards Aries and the 0 point for next February. More of that later. But there they are, sitting in Pisces and just shedding their energy on the other, relationship, how we relate to others. The moon is how we communicate to each other as well, because it's Gemini, which is duality, which is the twins. So how do we talk to each other? How do we express? How do we push through challenging or difficult conversations? Now then go down again to the sun in Sagittarius, in that interesting stellium of Lilith, which is, of course, the invisible space, the furthest you can get from the moon. And Black Moon Lilith is, of course, as we know, Adam's first wife, and she did not obey him. I think we are going to get information coming out, bearing that in mind, around this full moon of what is in the E-files. I say that because of Lilith being about the more darker side of sexuality. It has that Scorpio sense of depth of sexuality, of also all that can be base and carnal about sexuality. And it's Sagittarius. this news goes far. This affects a lot of people, businesses, countries. Then if we look at Venus at 5 degrees, so actually conjunct Lilith, there is an urgency with Venus here in Sagittarius. She is about relating and self-worth, and she is saying, I will have my justice, my say, because Sagittarius is also about truth. Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius, and so Jupiter really does demand truth and authenticity. Now, what's interesting is that we then have Juno, the asteroid of relationship, alongside what many people see as the true relationship planet, which is Venus. But actually, Juno is more about commitment and marriage, whereas you could say Venus is more aesthetic love, whereas Juno is about actually getting on with it and the commitment. And then you've got Mars that brings in that masculine energy. And so you've got Mars in Sagittarius, again, the energy of this fire sign, firing up Mars towards making huge strides forward in revealing truth. So I suppose what I'm saying in a nutshell is that I think this full moon is going to see a lot of stories, information coming out into the public eye, because the moon is in that 10th house. By the way, the chart is based for London, and that's universal time at 23:14 at night. And I think this news is going to come out. I think there are going to be karmic debts that are stacked up to be paid. And it's almost like with that South Node being in Virgo, as if they have to, the people that are guilty of whatever misdemeanors may emerge from the e-files as a metaphor, have to do public service or community service, where they serve the community. But does it also mean that we're going to get a lot of information about people that allegedly have been serving the community? That makes us think, doesn't it? I think it's also important to just be aware of the trine that is coming from Jupiter retrograde in Cancer to Mercury now direct in Scorpio. And so there's a build up of emotion. The emotions are going to spill out. I suspect when some of these stories start to emerge that we are going to see an absolute outpouring of emotion. Now, we also need to think about where this takes us to, and then we'll look at how this affects us on an individual level. And I am, of course, doing your 12 zodiac signs, all time-stamped in the description box. So the way forward is through Pisces. Pisces is the 12th sign of the zodiac, so it's about completion. I also think it's about seeing through the illusion, seeing beyond that, finding a way to turn this into something that ultimately can bring the awareness, psychological awareness that is needed for these ways of behaving to not affect society anymore, at least as much as we can. Of course it'll go on, because it's the way of the world, and it goes on. You see it in the news all the time in smaller ways with grooming gangs and the like. And whether we can ever see an end to that kind of behavior, I don't know. But I do think 2026 is a turning point, and maybe there will be many opportunities in 2026 for people to work out for themselves. First of all, not to allow themselves to be duped into that kind of way of life. Whether you're male or female, whatever side, wherever you are in that. But how's this full moon going to affect you personally? Well, maybe you will experience some inner form of revelations, some conscious awareness of how you can use the lessons of the past, the work you've done, that the service you have shown to others, and how that can take you forward into the future and, in a sense, set you free. So there will be that energy to it. And if I just come on to see what I've got in my notes here, because once I finish wittering about the chart, I tend to go and to the safety of my notes. But we have to think about just the very simple words that represent the sign of Gemini: clarity through information. But because Uranus has already left some energy in Gemini, even though Uranus has gone back into Taurus, you could say it's marked its territory. So that the feeling is that this full moon brings much sharper, faster, more revelatory thoughts, because it's the mind and communication and truth. And of course, that sun in Sagittarius is about the wisdom and the sense of the direction it can take us in. I think that it's a good time on a personal level to really actually look and analyze the way you think about a lot of the issues that have come up this year. Maybe it's in your own personal life, but our attitude to situations, our attitude to sexuality, our attitude to how men behave to women or women behave to men, our attitude, do we have such rigid or narrow views that we need to bring in some of the mutability, the flexibility of this grand mutable cross to clear outdated thinking? Isn't this a time to start waking up to new ways of thinking and to allow oneself, as I did in that video, when I did my video about the E-files, which I didn't expect to be about the E-files, and about how women in the 70s and 80s, and as a young woman in the 70s and 80s, I had no choice, or maybe you could say, argue I had a choice, but it was the way things were, and it was very difficult to not fall into the narrative of being playthings for men. And I know that is shocking and awful, but I think it's about understanding that young girls, young women, I guess depending on their upbringing, certainly, but you know, in the 70s and 80s, we, what can I say? We were breaking through the hold that religion had on behavior. So it was a real crossover period of breaking through that. And so the 60s had seen the hippie generation and free love and, you know, wild child behavior. And the 70s and 80s certainly still had that wild child flavor, but it was probably more, it became more sophisticated. And the trouble is, and this is where I come back to this full moon, I think it's about the self-reflection we can do and the learning and understanding we can do in our process to reach a point within where we can forgive the young woman who knew no better, who just didn't have the awareness or the guidance to know any better. And that's okay because she does now. So I think it's about, there's something about this full moon, about forgiveness, about, you know, self-reflection, maybe having those conversations with other women of that age group, you know, and saying, how was it for you? And, you know, is it something we ever really talk about? And once again, I didn't think I'd be going down this rabbit hole, but clearly there's still a lot that needs to be said about it. And I think it's about dissolving the illusions of the past and taking a stance towards, that was me then, that was how it was then. I knew no better. And if I talk about myself, because of who I was and my whole psyche and my amazingly low self-esteem, I wanted to be liked. And I thought, if I didn't do as I was told by someone of the opposite sex, I wouldn't be liked. And if I didn't actually do what he wanted me to, maybe it meant he didn't love me. But of course, he didn't love me anyway. But it's taken many, many years. I'm not saying I've only discovered that now. No, I discovered that a long time ago. But what's interesting is that it's coming out now. And it was triggered with that new moon in Scorpio and the Mercury-Uranus opposition, which I find fascinating. And I talk like this to show you how you can use astrology, how you can look at it and see in this kind of four-dimensional reality or five-dimensional reality that the energies of the planets are almost playing us like an instrument to say, look, you haven't healed this bit yet. Let's just tug at these chords. Now let's just bring in some of this healing from this full moon where you can let this go and move on and just send love to that young woman who didn't know better. And the men, actually, maybe some of them knew better, but a lot of them didn't. They just, because it's the way it was. Anyway, I'm not going to witter on about that too long because I think I've done this one to death. But maybe we will find that it's an aha moment full moon. I think we can have important conversations, not only with others, but with ourselves. And I think this full moon will illuminate what has been unspoken. So it's a great time for analysing relationships. It's a great time for making decisions. and speaking your truth. So I think at this point, we should come on to your individual zodiac signs, because I think that would be really, hopefully, quite helpful. So remember, it's for your sun sign and your rising sign, and they will all be time-stamped. And I'm going to get Jerry to remove the chart. And it goes. And as usual, we will start with Aries, and I will just have a sip before I start. Aries, sun in Aries, rising sign in Aries. It's in your third house of communication, so it is, of course, a Gemini house. And so this underlines for you, especially, the need for communication. All around these topics I've been discussing, to look at them, to be quite forensic in your research. You may find it helpful to talk to siblings if you have them, or cousins who are of a similar age, to see what their experiences are, because maybe it was something that was never discussed. It was just because that was the way life was. I think travel will be on your agenda, Aries. And you'll realize, I think, with this full moon, that there may be certain decisions that you can't put off anymore. You have to make a decision. You have to take a stance. Think of this mutable cross, this grand mutable cross. It's trying to help you find the flexibility in the challenges that are being presented to you by others, by people that you're close to, about subjects that are to do with your local community. I think you will have realizations and an awareness through this full moon that will really empower you to change the way you communicate, and perhaps to have an important conversation that you've been feeling it, bubbling away just under your consciousness. And you know that you have to have this conversation, and it feels as if it's something to do with something that is unsaid, but it needs to be addressed and needs to be said, because perhaps what's been happening is you have been skating round what you actually probably know is the truth. And the fact that you somehow know it's the truth but don't really like it or want it means that you are avoiding having this particular discussion. So I would suggest, Aries, that you use the energy of this full moon in Gemini to address any discussions with people that you somehow know we need to talk conversation. Because actually the relief you will feel once you've had that conversation will be enormous. Let's move on to Taurus. Taurus, this is for sun in Taurus or for rising sign in Taurus. Well, Taurus, this is your second house of finance. So, of course, on a normal zodiac wheel, it's your house anyway. So actually, you're quite comfortable with this. So I think you will be having some deep thoughts about your financial situation, also about what value you give you. You may find your priorities about value, whether it's to do with objects or finances or, material possessions. You may find your values changing. You may find that how you value others, you start to reflect on it. You begin to do a bit of thinking about, well, do I do what perhaps I accuse others of? So maybe becoming aware, Taurus, of where you might project your own stuff onto others, but hadn't really realized you're doing it. It's never a bad practice to come back down to thinking, do I do that? Is that really me? Have I behaved like that? I do think that emotional value will become much clearer through this full moon. And it's going to help you make practical decisions about practical stuff in your life that you've got to address in the short and medium term. I suspect you will find this full moon quite good at helping you clear out emotional clutter and being more honest and truthful with yourself about your truths, your inner truths. Really looking at yourself in the mirror with this one, Taurus. Let's move on to Gemini, because Gemini, for Sun in Gemini and for rising sign in Gemini, it's your first house. So, as I've said on every full moon video I do, it's always rather interesting when we have a full moon in our own sign, whether you're Sun or rising sign. So it is about your identity, isn't it, this full moon? What's it going to bring for you? Maybe a turning point in plans and a need to find some flexibility, and maybe even being able to just tuning into having some eagle sight to be able to soar up to the heights that Sagittarius can have, and be able to look at that whole terrain that you have before you, to just see where you need to make changes. I think it's a turning point for your direction and how you express yourself. I suspect you will really experience quite a personal breakthrough. And this is going to sharpen your thinking. It's as if you will see the direction that you need to go with several different areas of your life, especially if they're to do with education, your spiritual way of thinking, and also to do with travel, whether that's travel of the mind or physical travel. I think you're going to find your voice with this full moon. It feels as if you've been in the shadows a bit and perhaps not felt confident enough to come out and say what you think about what you see going on in the world and in your own environment. So you do find a strong voice, and you also find that ability to be flexible and diplomatic with any difficult discussions that may be on your personal agenda. Let's move on to Cancer. So this is for Sun in Cancer or for rising sign in Cancer. Well, it's your 12th house, Cancer. So this is the inner you. It's where you can feel sometimes restricted, imprisoned, depressed. And depression is something that Cancer can be quite brave about. You know, Cancer can suffer from depression, but they don't talk about it. They just keep it to themselves because of that tough shell they inhabit. And yet it covers a very soft, mushy interior that can be very badly wounded. What's going to come to the surface from your psyche that you've kept hidden or you thought you'd kept hidden? I would pay attention to your dreams at the moment, your intuition. You know, we often, I was thinking that this morning as I was waking up from a dream, and I know that if you close your eyes and keep your eyes closed, you can usually hold on to it. And I did for a few minutes, and then it went. But it was like the insight it gave me into something quite personal in me in those few moments as I was awakening from it. I wonder whether this would be a really good time to pay attention to those dreams and write what you can remember down and look at what it kind of suggests. Things that are hidden in you can come to the surface. They've even been hidden from you. It's like you hiding from you. You don't need to hide from you. You've only got you. So come out into the sun, Cancer. Because I think if you actually look down into these hidden parts of yourself that only you know about, they can offer amazing intuitive clarity. And through the conscious releasing of them through this full moon in Gemini, you get that emotional release and psychological cleansing. So I do feel something on a deep level comes up for you and you go, how funny that I've only thought about it like that now. Because everything comes at the right time. Let's move on to Leo. Sun in Leo, rising sign in Leo. Leo, it's your 11th house. Now, this is about seeing the bigger picture. It's also about our social groups, friendships, alliances with larger groups of people. Maybe what this is going to do is illuminate some clarity for you, as if you are beginning to get a sense of who your group, your soul family, your tribe is, that you're really getting a sense. It's almost as if you're glimpsing the future and you're seeing who is going to be part of your group going forward, your soul group going forward. And yet they've always been there. You just hadn't noticed or seen them. But it's as if you're all finally connecting with each other and going, oh, yes, I thought it was you. Oh, hello. And like, you won't need to say anything to each other because you know. You will know that you know what you know. And you reach a turning point, certainly with smaller parts of this group, maybe some individuals from this group. It may be you have some communications via the internet, the technology that presents, and have some wonderful discussions that fire you up so that you really, really are deeply in touch with your own truth. I suspect you will be almost giving birth to a new goal through this full moon. You're reaching a turning point on an inner level. And this turning point is coming in your thinking and the ideas that come in around this full moon. And it's going to define your future for a long time to come. Certainly well into next year and beyond. So pay attention to what comes up for you around that full moon in Gemini on the 4th of December. Right, now let's move on to Virgo. Sun in Virgo, or for rising sign in Virgo. Virgo, it's your 10th life. 10th life, is it? Are you a cat? How funny was that? Well, anyway, it's your 10th house. And it's your career house. Your public life, how we see you out there in the world. I suspect that for you, Virgo, certain things are coming together, and the information that you have been gathering from many different sources to do with a very big part of your work, your career, or your passion, whatever it is that you focus your energies on, and it crystallizes into some kind of eureka-formed moment. It's like you reach a professional peak in your understanding, and you get the recognition, and even if it's not about being necessarily, although some people might experience being moved up the rung if they work for a company, they may get offered a higher position. It's being recognized for the work that you've done, which maybe has not always been recognized. And so there's a real shift coming here, so that recognition that's actually well overdue. But that's okay, because, Virgo, you're patient. And you knew that this would come. But you also know that it comes at the right time. And even though sometimes, in spite of your patience, you become very impatient, frustrated, and anxious, what happens around this full moon will help you clarify your next step forward, whether that's within a job you do, your career, being self-employed, something you're passionate about. But the next step is going to reveal itself through this full moon in Gemini. Let's look at Libra. Sun in Libra, rising sign in Libra. This is your 9th house of higher education, your spiritual beliefs and travel, study, long distance travel, travel of the mind, travel of the soul. This feels as if this full moon sharpens up your awareness and thinking around some beliefs you've had for a long, long time. So that actually what you begin to experience is a trace element from Uranus that is going to enter this part of your chart fully next April, and the breakthrough that Uranus can bring. So it's as if it's sown the seeds into this house for you, this 9th house, so that you will have more clarity. You will see more clearly how you want to proceed forward. You are going to feel expansive on your, or within your mental thinking and capacity. You will have a new understanding of your beliefs. They will change. You're going to be letting go of a lot of beliefs that you realize just don't resonate anymore. In fact, you'll almost be surprised at how happily you'll let go of something you always thought was true. Because now you know better and you have different evidence. So there is a sense of long-term vision and a sense of expansive inspiration as you understand this new set of beliefs that are beginning to crystallize in your life. Now let's move on to Scorpio. And this is for Sun in Scorpio or for rising sign in Scorpio. It's your 8th house, Scorpio. So this is the house of intimacy, sexuality. It's also the house, of course, that you, by ZODIAC, rule. So it's the house of transformation and deep secrets. I wonder whether you will find, Scorpio, that you have to acknowledge some deep emotional truths that you have about intimacy, trust, shared intimacy. I wonder whether there is something that has been so uncomfortable that there is now the opportunity through an awareness and a realization as this psychological breakthrough takes place for you to break through and find a truth about trust, a new truth for you about intimacy, a new truth about shared resources that will transform your perspective on how you deal with others as you move forward. I think you're going to be quite reflective around this full moon. So as I've said with some of the other signs, I think you will be really delving deep into your own inner world and how you affect others, and thinking about how do others value me? Because do we ever think about that? Do we think, does so-and-so value me? Do they think, we don't, do we? Not really. So maybe you'll think, do they value me? Do they value my presence? Do they value my opinions? This is quite a revelationary full moon for you. You're going to see a lot of inner truths come to light, which have the potential to be really transforming. Let's move on to Sagittarius. And this is for Sun in Sagittarius or rising sign in Sagittarius. It's your 7th house. This is the house of significant relationships, be it business, love, marriage, living together, partnerships, close friends. It could be same-sex friends. I think when we get a full moon here, especially for you, it's about a moment of truth. And I suspect that someone will make it clear what their intentions are. If you have a scenario that somehow resonates with that. A full moon can also mean a little bit like, I think of the death card in the tarot, because the death card often when it appears in a young person's layout can actually mean the end of single life and the start of a relationship. So that sometimes a full moon can mean the end of being on your own, if you're on your own and you don't want to be on your own. So it may be a great time to go out there and take advantage of meeting other people. And also, I think it's about having the courage to show someone how you really feel. I think that if you're prepared to be flexible, which you are, because you're good at that, Sagittarius, then I think it could really help make some positive changes in significant relationships. Because if another, or if you are saying, look, I'd like to take this to the next level, then this full moon is good energy to explore that together. It's good energy. Let's move on to Capricorn. This is for Sun in Capricorn or for rising sign in Capricorn. Capricorn, it's your 6th house. This is your routine, your daily routine. This is what you do every day. This can be our pets and our little 4-legged friends or birds or whatever small creatures we choose to share our lives with. As I was saying that, I was thinking, oh dear, I must be careful because that sounds awful, sharing our lives with creatures, because they might be of the 2-legged kind. Oh, stop wittering, Penny. I think the full moon will give you some clarity around your routines and your work patterns. It's also going to bring some clarity for any health matters that have been a little bit unclear, or that there have had to be some research in or some tests done. I think there will be some evidence coming out, some information coming out that helps you understand this all a little bit better. You might find you start tweaking your habits, changing your habits, finding some just different ways of doing things. It's always good when we do that. Changing our routine helps our well-being and our thinking. It gives us clarity. And I do think this full moon, because it's in Gemini, because it's your 6th house, can give you some relief on a psychological and emotional level, as if it's giving you the opportunity to face maybe some inner truths or conversations that need to be had with others. And that if you can clear the decks with certain people in your life, then it will actually help contribute to your physical health improving. And it's been quite a tough time for you, Capricorn. And I think that shifting out of this and finding better health regimes and psychological health regimes will be really helpful for you with this particular full moon. Let's move on to Aquarius. So this is the Sun in Aquarius or rising sign in Aquarius. It's your 5th house. This is our house of creativity. This can be drama, music. Maybe it can be drama. It can be writing. It can be painting, art. It can be love affairs. It's also, I think, the house of fun and joy. And a full moon, I think, can bring some revelations. Maybe you complete a particular creative work and you think, oh, actually, I'm quite chuffed with this. I'm quite pleased with what I've produced. So there could be that edge to it. It feels as if you're going to feel quite joyful and passionate about new creative ideas that are coming to you. The way you express yourself will become clearer for you. And even though you tend to choose yourself as the person you most like to be with, well, there's nothing wrong with that. We do need to get on with ourselves. I think you would be really exploring creative ideas with yourself and looking at how you can produce that in the outside world, how you can give some of your experience and wisdom in a different kind of package, something that gets people thinking a bit more, thinking outside the box, seeing the bigger picture. I also think there'll be something going on around this full moon that really does bring you a lot of joy. And that's just going to be a nice feel-good edge to it. So I think that's quite good, Aquarius. So finally, we move on to Pisces. For the sun in Pisces or rising sign in Pisces, for my oceans of emotions. Always my oceans of emotions. It's your 4th house, and this is the house of home and family. What home truths need to come to the surface? Family truths? There seems to be some energy around your emotional roots. Anything to do with the past can be brought to the surface for discussion with this Gemini full moon. There may really be something from the past, the deep past, childhood past. So an emotional root reveals itself. Maybe because we are already in the energy of the holiday season. America has had Thanksgiving Day, and we're all moving towards Christmas, a time when traditionally we spend time with family. And it brings up lots of thoughts and feelings about the past and our childhood. There is a root issue for you, Pisces, that needs to be understood and resolved. And it may be something that has been swept under the proverbial carpet. And for you to move on, for you to have more clarity, for you to be able to embrace the future and to see how you can create a more trusting environment within your family where they're not, uncomfortable around you because maybe there's something you're withholding. Somehow it's about exposing your truth, Pisces, and having faith in that. And if you're able to do that, it will resolve a lot of issues. It's a letting go. It really is a letting go. Well, there we go. That's all 12 zodiac signs. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining me for this full moon in Gemini. And the next full moon will be in in January. My God, we'll be in a new year. Unbelievable. Where did this year go? But everyone's saying that, and maybe we always say that. So I want to say thank you so much for joining me. And please remember, as always, I'm super grateful if you can comment, if you can like, and if you can hype, and always please subscribe. I'd be super grateful for that. In the meantime, I wish you well for the month of December. I will be back popping up in lots of different Astro Witters, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.